Dawg House Podcast is back, coming off a great NFL draft for the Georgia Bulldogs. Got a special new guest, Tim Collins from Answer the Call. How are you doing today, Tim?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me. It is such an honor to be on this. I'm ready to talk some ball. I know that you're a big Georgia fan, so that tells me you watch a lot of college football. I like college football. I like NFL, so I'm excited to be here, man.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate you coming on. And I connected with Tim over the Sports Podcast Instagram. That's been a great networking type thing. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the Dawg House Podcast. Got a lot of good response from Instagram and some of my YouTube shorts. So I really appreciate that. And Tim, jumping into it, Georgia-related podcast. So, of course, we got to talk about the Dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia gets the second most draft picks with 13. 14 was with Ohio State. Of course, they won the national title, and you got to give it off to the Buckeyes. They were loaded.
Yeah.
But coming from your end, what kind of stood out from 13 Dogs getting picked?
13 Dogs getting picked for me, I mean, it's no surprise. Kirby Smart has done a really good job recruiting over the years, and, he's won national titles. And you look at the Philadelphia Eagles defense in the NFL, and a lot of them are Georgia players, Jalen Carter and is it the Nakobe Dean? Players like that, on that Georgia national championship winning team. And now they're on, Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles just won the Super Bowl. So when you think Georgia Bulldogs and you think Georgia football, you really just, that defense stands out to you. And in my opinion, it's no shock that it was 13. Honestly, I felt like it could have been more, but 13 is definitely nothing to hang your hat on. And the second most in this draft class, only behind Ohio State. I mean, that Ohio State team was loaded. I mean, probably the best overall team this year, obviously, for obvious reasons. They won the national championship. But, Georgia, and they had some that slid that I was kind of shocked, but there was a lot in the first round as well. So,
yeah, man, all in all, with Georgia, I was really surprised that they got 13 just because, to be honest, this was a down year for Georgia. It wasn't the typical like it was just because of the landscape of college football. But the ones that really stood out to me was Jalon Walker sliding to 15. I really thought he was going to go to the Panthers. So that's what really stood out for me. And
that was kind of a shock for me too.
It was. And then the whole thing is I am an Atlanta Falcons fan first, Panthers second. I know that's kind of, people go, you can't be both. But anyway, I like whichever team's doing better. But Mykel Williams going to San Fran at 11 was actually surprising too, that he went ahead of Jalon Walker. But hey, Jalon Walker was there. Kid is Salisbury, North Carolina kid, good kid, no issues, is a great leader, has a good motor. I think they did say maybe his knock was he's a little undersized. But as a Falcons fan, because for years, Falcons fans were always like, you have all these Georgia players going elsewhere, always going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they just had, 6 on their team and won the Super Bowl. So this really helps out that. And the Falcons going first 3 picks defense, because that defense was bad last year. Another one that really stood out was Malaki Starks going to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
I'm just really glad that they got 3 in the first round. That was my goal. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. And then some of the other ones they took were Tate Ratledge, Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions ended up taking 3 Dogs in the draft. Jared Wilson, Trevor Etienne here in Charlotte was a good pickup. But I'll say the one that I wanted to, and I mentioned it on some of my shorts, was Dirty Dan Jackson getting in the 7th round.
Dirty Dan.
Because the guy didn't get invited to the combine, and I think he came in motivated, chip on his shoulder, and I think that Georgia Pro Day really stood out. So all in all, 13, I'll take it. Nothing like the team in 2021 that had 15 and 5 in the first round. I don't know if we'll ever see, at least from a Georgia's side, that elite of talent, but great for the Dogs, great for recruiting going forward. Kirby Smart can say, hey, we have another 13 when he's talking with these kids and their families trying to recruit them. So all in all, it was a win for Georgia with 13.
You brought up Malaki Starks going to Baltimore, and I gotta admit, in my last mock draft right before the NFL draft, I actually had the Baltimore Ravens making a trade with the Green Bay Packers and taking him at 23. And the fact that he fell at 27 actually is kind of a head scratcher to me. And honestly, I'm not sure how all those other teams in the first round kind of let that safety fall to the Baltimore Ravens. And that's just kind of like how with the Philadelphia Eagles, you allowed that linebacker, Jahad Campbell from Bama, you allowed him to fall to the Eagles. And I got to say, Malaki Starks falling to the Ravens is a steal because I had him top 15, maybe even cracking the top 10 in some of the mock drafts I've been seeing. And he fell to 27. And now Baltimore has, kind of like a two-headed monster in that secondary. They have a really scary secondary, with Kyle Hamilton and now Malaki Starks playing safety. So it's going to be really tough on teams trying to throw it over the top with those two in the back in the secondary.
Yeah, I agree with that. Malaki Starks was always a steal for me that late in the draft. He was really good his sophomore and his freshman and sophomore year, but his junior year they put a lot on him because Georgia was less talented back there. But this kid's got a lot of potential. He's a ball hawk back there, tackles in space, not scared to come up and lay you out on the run. So definitely a steal on that end. And Georgia did very well on the O-line getting drafted because Georgia took a step back at the O-line. Everybody knows about it as a Georgia fan. I think they were 100 north of 100 in rushing, 87th I think in total offense. So they're going to have replace a lot of guys coming up, but still it's good for just the whole overall recruiting and the program. Also wanted to mention last week, Griffin, close friend, I was able to go to Quail Hollow, and there was a Georgia alumni meeting where Kirby Smart was there, and I got to hear him speak and actually got to meet him and got a picture with him. So that was an awesome experience, and put it on my social media and everything. So anyway, Kirby Smart, the man out there, DGD for sure. I want that guy to coach forever. I know that won't happen, so I just want to enjoy him every year that we get him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was good. But before we look at Tim's Arkansas Razorback draft picks, I want to give a shout-out to our great sponsor, VivaTequilaSeltzer.com, been a great sponsor of the show the last couple of years. 0 carbs, 0 sugar, great for tailgate, coming up for any type of event, soccer games, got the pool's about to open, round of golf, but 0 carbs, 0 sugar for 20% off Dawg House 20. Again, that's Dawg House 20% off. Also check out the new coconut flavor that they have is selling off the shelves, but get it if you can. And great sponsor of the show. Check them out on YouTube. They're growing there, and YouTube and Instagram as well. And Tim, want to talk about your Arkansas Razorbacks. I believe they had 2 guys go in the first round. Also, another question I did want to have for you. What's the status with Sam Pittman? Sam Pittman is close to Georgia program as being one of the best defense coordinators they ever had. But what's the update on that? And is he on the hot seat or what's – anyway, give us the update on Sam Pittman in Arkansas first off.
Sam Pittman has kind of been on the hot seat the last couple of seasons, but honestly, Coach Pittman, he always, has great talent. It's just sometimes, injuries or I don't know what happens, why the Hogs this past season, barely made the bowl game. But I think he is going to be on the hot seat, but I don't think it's going to be as hot as some may think. I think, Arkansas is going to be like, hey, you really have kind of built a culture here, and we're going to see what you can do. Now, if he comes out and just absolutely bombs it this season and doesn't make a bowl game, doesn't make progress from last season, then, yeah, I could see him, being very much on the hot seat. But right now, I think it's kind of, he's kind of relaxed, kind of like what we are right now. We're chilling. We're relaxed. I think he's okay at the moment. I like the guy. I think he's a great coach. And, he's, you mentioned defensive coordinator. He's also a really good offensive line coach, and he's really turned around the offensive line for Arkansas. And so I kind of hope, to see him stay with Arkansas a few more years.
Yeah, I think he was great, and I think I said it wrong. Offensive line coach. He brought in so many 5-stars with Georgia, and he's just an overall good dude, man. And we loved him while he was here. So I hope he kind of coaches forever for you guys. And then also, I think he's coming off, was it a hip injury too as well?
Yeah. He had actually had hip surgery at the end of last season, and in the bowl game, they were like, "Oh, sit up in the press box area, blah blah blah," and he's like, "No, I want to be on the field with my boys." And so I really respect that kind of coach. Kind of bring that toughness as a leader, and that toughness as a leader transfers to leadership on the field. So I think he's a great coach, and he's very well respected at the University of Arkansas.
Yeah. Hope he can stay around a couple more years longer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And looking at the Arkansas Razorbacks draft, looks like Landon Jackson and Isaac, is it Tesla?
Tesla.
And also, maybe you can talk about them a little bit, and then also maybe some of the unrestricted free agents maybe that stood out or have a chance of making NFL roster.
Yeah, so Isaac Tesla, he went in the third round, 70th overall to the Lions. I'm not going to lie, when they drafted him, I was kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? Because they have a pretty decent wide receiver room with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and a few others, not to mention Sam Laporta at tight end. But then it kind of made sense to me. Isaac Tesla is not a burner. He's not going to beat you over the top. But he does do a good job at creating separation at the line. And, in the NFL, that is big. And so his first step, he can kind of get that separation. He's a little bit bigger wide receiver, and he has a really good catch radius. And so I feel like he can go up and get those 50-50 balls a lot easier than, maybe Jameson Williams and others. And so it's going to be interesting to see him as a Detroit Lion. Now, I will say I probably would have been more excited if Ben Johnson was still offensive coordinator for the Lions to see what he could draw up. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see what he does in the NFL. And obviously the Lions saw something because they took him in the third round, 70th overall. And we just got to hope that, he doesn't fall victim to a very deep wide receiver room. So, and Landon Jackson was the 72nd overall to the Bills. And I got to tell you, I'm excited to see that. Von Miller's not there anymore for Buffalo. They really needed to revamp that defensive line. And I wanted to see Landon Jackson go, obviously, to the Chargers, but, they didn't take him. I wish the best for Landon Jackson. I hope he has a great career. And honestly, for me, him falling in the third round is a steal for me. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. I watched him, at the Combine, and I was really impressed with him. Obviously, I watched a lot of Hogs football this past season, so I got to see him in actual games. But watching him in those drills, watching him at the Combine, watching him at the Senior Bowl and stuff like that, he really was impressive. And I honestly could have seen a team like Washington in the late first round, or maybe a Philadelphia or even a Kansas City right there at the last part of it, taking a chance on him. And then I thought for sure he was going to go in the second round. And so he fell all the way to the third round. And so I was a little bit shocked and a little bit, surprised by it. But I wish him well and go represent the Hogs.
Yeah, man, sounds like a steal. So I think that's good overall for Arkansas. They'll probably help with recruiting. Also being the SEC helps.
Oh, yeah.
And then also, Tim, looking at it, I know you're the Los Angeles Chargers fan. Just wanted to say, what did you think about the Chargers? Also wanted to bring up that Ladd McConkey, DGD, of course, he was great. I did want to say a little Ladd McConkey story here in Charlotte. I think it's after they played the Panthers this year. I work out at the Y, and saw a couple of hoodies when I was there back in the fall. Anyway, long story short, Ladd McConkey was actually in the bathroom. I guess he worked out in the area and stayed because they were going on West Coast. Anyway, I got a pick with Ladd McConkey. Really nice guy, and
wow,
and couldn't happen any better.
I'm a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
he was cool, good dude, especially him having 1,300 yard. And I think he just got married too. So man, shout out to Ladd McConkey. We're always going to miss that kid, DGD, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, man. So, and looking at it, looks like Amari and Hampton, hopefully I said that way, North Carolina kid, because I'm here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
What you think about that pick? And then some of these others. Trey Harris, he was a good wide receiver for Ole Miss. I remember watching him. Got a South Carolina guy. So it's good to have a mix of some SEC guys. But, yeah, thoughts on the Chargers draft?
Okay, so real quick, the first thing that stands out to me is Amari Hampton. You can call it what it is. He fell to the Chargers at 22. I really thought he could have went in, top 15. In my latest mock draft, I had him in top 10. I had 2 running backs going in the top 10. Obviously, that didn't happen. Amari Hampton is the great complement to Najee Harris. Najee Harris is the big bruiser, goal line back, And now Amari Hampton, he's not going to burn you in the open field. But what he will do is he has enough explosiveness to hit the hole and get the yards that he needs for first downs. But one thing to not overlook is he is still very strong. He is a very strong back, so he can easily be a 3-down back. And the reason he can be a 3-down back is he's strong, he has explosiveness, and he has very underrated pass blocking skills, which in the NFL, a lot of running backs, they can't pick up the block on the linebackers or help with the DNs. He does a really good job picking up the blitz. So shout out to Amari Hampton for, not just focusing on running the ball, but, understanding if he wants to be successful in the NFL, he has to be, an all-around back, catch the ball out of the backfield, block, run, and that sort of thing. So I'm really happy. And, and Coach Harbaugh, he loves to run the ball. He wants to build from the inside out, and he runs that smash mouth football. And now pairing him with Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey and Trey Harris, who I'll talk about in just a moment, now that Chargers offense is kind of going to be a whole new dynamic that we haven't seen in a really long time. Because when you think about it, now teams can't stack the box like they used to, or they can't just drop back in coverage, to defend Justin Herbert. So now defenses are going to have to kind of really play the Chargers and actually think about what they're going to do. So I really like that pick. I really like the Trey Harris pick, second round, 55th overall. Like you said, SEC boy. I'm not one of those that is just strictly SEC talent, but, it's hard to deny SEC talent. And he's kind of like the perfect complement to Ladd McConkey. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's not going to burn you either, but he is a big body, red zone target, got great catch radius, and I'm excited for this one. Now, I will tell you that there is a very underrated pick, and it happened in the 5th round, who's also a wide receiver out of the SEC. He went to Auburn, and that is Keandre Lambert-Smith. He ran a 4.37. So he's got that blazing speed. Now you got the big body. Now you got the blazer. And Ladd McConkey's kind of like that route runner. So you pair all 3 of them together, and that offense should be humming really well. Interesting fact about Keandre Lambert-Smith that many might not know. He is the cousin of Cam Chancellor. So he's going to have that dog mentality in him. So I'm really excited. I thought they did a really good job. They had some defensive players that they drafted as well. So overall, I'm happy, man. Like I'm super happy. I'm super pumped. And I got to say, as a Chargers fan, I probably haven't been this pumped in a while after the draft. So
nice, man. Glad you're excited about it, and glad about I think Jim Harbaugh. I know all his everything that went on like with Michigan and everything, but I still think he's a great coach, and he's heading in the right direction with you guys. Real quick with the Chargers, I know he's been banged up the last couple of years, but honest thoughts on Justin Herbert going forward. Is he the franchise quarterback? Do you see him kind of taking to that next level? I just know he's been a little banged up and he's getting some criticism. But anyway, thoughts on Justin Herbert?
He has been a little banged up, and, people can say what they want. And I understand in the NFL, your success is based off of Super Bowls or playoffs and stuff like that. Well, Justin Herbert hasn't had the talent around him. He hasn't. I mean, he had Keenan Allen and Mykel Williams. Yes, I understand. Like the first year he was in the league, I get that. But Mykel Williams was banged up, had a bad coach. he's really kind of suffered from poor coaching. And I really feel with Jim Harbaugh, and like I was saying with the Omari and Hampton pick, now the Chargers offense is a new dynamic. Okay. Jim Harbaugh and the GM Joe Hortz in the offseason, their focus was to revamp this offense, and they've done it in a big way. They went out and signed Mekhi Becton for offensive line help. They went out and brought back Mykel Williams for a veteran leadership in the wide receiver room. I really think that we're going to see the best version of Justin Herbert this season. I think he is going to be capable of throwing the 5,000 yards like he did in year 2. I think he can easily be in the running for MVP. And I really, really see this team making a playoff run, and not just getting eliminated in the first round like last season. They didn't lose a whole lot on the defensive side, and I felt like they did a really good job at the pieces that they did lose at, kind of filling in those gaps. And, like I said, in the third round, they took Jamari Caldwell, defensive tackle out of Oregon. So, he's not going to be an elite pass rusher, but what he can do is come in and stop the run. And Kyle Kennard from South Carolina as an edge rusher. So, just to kind of give them a little bit more depth at that position. And their defense was great last year. The offense sputtered at times. Jim Harbaugh realized it. Jim Harbaugh went out and really put a team around Justin Herbert. Now, I will say this. If Justin Herbert is not successful with this team, then maybe it's time to have a different conversation, because Omari Hampton, Najee Harris, Ladd McConkey, Mykel Williams, Trey Harris, the tight ends, the veteran tight ends, Tyler Eifert, and they went out and drafted. They actually traded up in the 5th round for Rondé Gadsden from Syracuse, and he's a big body tight end who has a history of making big time catches. So if Justin Herbert does not succeed this season, I really think maybe we are going to have to have a different conversation and start, is he really the face of the franchise? Because if he doesn't succeed with all this talent, I feel like he's going to become Phillip Rivers 2.0.
Wow, Phillip Rivers 2.0. Okay. I like that. So it sounds like it's put up or shut up.
I mean, I love the man. I was excited when the Chargers drafted him. I followed Oregon a lot. Back from the Marcus Mariota days, I've always kind of followed Oregon football. I followed him at Oregon. He got drafted by the Chargers. I was like, all right. I was excited. But, you got paid. Now it's time to put up or shut up, like you just said. So,
yeah. I like it. I think Harbaugh, give him one more year. He does have some pieces around him. I do like that Najee Harris pickup because he is older, but I still think he's got something left in the tank. And then you're putting some new guys around him. So kind of like the Hampton kid from UNC. So yeah, on paper you guys are looking good.
And we just put a 10-year thing for J.K. Dobbins. So basically, if he doesn't sign with another team by training camp, he comes back to us. And if he does sign with another team, it'll be kind of like one of those the comp pick. So if he signs with another team, we'll get a draft pick in next year's draft. So kudos for the Chargers for doing that move this afternoon.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate you giving the breakdown of the Chargers there.
Yeah, man.
And then real quick, winners and losers, maybe some winners that stuck out, and then maybe some losers from the NFL draft this past weekend.
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, unbiased opinion here. I think the Chargers did a really good job. I'm not going to say that they're 100% one of my winners, but they had a really solid job. And honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, the whole AFC West, from the Raiders to the Broncos to the Chiefs to the Chargers, had a really great draft. And so shout out to the AFC West. I think it could honestly be one of the best divisions in football this upcoming season, if it plays out how it should. I got to say, one of the losers for me, and I actually was talking about this on another show last night, it's got to be Cleveland. You had the chance to draft, Travis Hunter, a two-way player, and you traded back. Okay, which is great. You helped your future. But I mean, you also got to help now. I mean, they did get a good pick, Mason Graham at 5th overall, and they got a good linebacker and a good running back. But where they really kind of lost for me is they drafted 2 quarterbacks. They drafted Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon, 94th overall. And then in the 5th round, 144th overall, they turned around and drafted Shedeur Sanders, which would become their last pick of the draft. I'm one of those believers that you kind of have to have quarterbacks of similar style. You know, Lamar Jackson is a great example. The Ravens basically redid their whole playbook to fit Lamar Jackson's strengths. Okay, and then they brought in backups that are real similar to the way that he plays. Now, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders are kind of two different players. And one of the things that jumps out at you is Dillon Gabriel is a left-handed quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders is your traditional right-handed quarterback. And right off the bat, for me, that's kind of now you have your wide receivers out of sync. Your offensive line, where it starts, is already out of sync because traditionally the left tackle is the best player on the offensive line, protecting the blind side of the right-handed quarterback. Now with Dillon Gabriel, you have a weaker offensive tackle going up against probably the stronger edge rusher and not being able to protect Dillon Gabriel's blind side. So I think in that quarterback room, with Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders, I just kind of feel like they could have went a different route in one of those rounds, And I understand the competition aspect of it, but I really just kind of feel that they could have done something slightly different there. And who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but in my eyes, I feel like they lost. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stay in the AFC North, and I'm going to beat up on the AFC North here, actually, if I'm being honest. Steelers, for me, I feel like they lost. They had a chance at Shedeur Sanders in the 3rd round. They took Caleb Johnson, and then they took Will Howard in the 6th round. They put all their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket, and I just feel that they could have done a better job. And the Bengals, that 1st-round pick of Shamar Stewart, 17th overall, they reached for him. He had, I think, 3.5 sacks in his whole career at Texas A&M. So for me, those are some of the big losers of the draft. Now, a team that I feel kind of won, like I said, the AFC West definitely stands out to me because, what they did. The Raiders drafted the best running back in the class, and then they traded back. But I got to say, a big winner for me is the Patriots. The New England Patriots did a really good job. They got the best offensive tackle in the class, Will Campbell, LSU. Used to playing against that SEC talent every Saturday. In the 2nd round, they got Travion Henderson, running back from Ohio State, national championship winning team. They got a really good value pick in Mykel Williams, who can learn behind Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. And looking at it, I feel like they just really hit every piece that they needed. And I feel like they
got a Georgia guy and Jared Wilson. Got to throw that in there.
Oh, yeah. Jared Smith.
Jared Wilson, yeah.
Jared Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's for New England, right? Yeah, I clicked on that. Yeah. I just had to throw that in there. He's a Georgia guy, sorry.
Jared Smith, offensive lineman, yep.
Yeah.
So, the Patriots did a really good job there, and I got to say they're probably one of the big winners of the draft. I feel like, they really kind of put the pieces around Drake May. He's the franchise guy. In the offseason, they got a veteran, Stephon Diggs. They drafted a rookie. They got a rookie running back to pair with Ramondre Stevenson. So big shout out to the Patriots. And I got to say, who else did I have as winners? Vikings, I feel like they lost in a way, but not for what many people might think. They just didn't have the draft picks. They only had 5 picks in this year's draft, so it's kind of hard to win a draft if you don't have the picks.
Yeah.
So, I think those are what I have for the winners and losers.
Yeah. Completely agree. And I'll touch on it real quick because I know it was the big headline, and I kind of felt like it overshadowed a lot. But anyway, was is Shedeur Sanders, when you really kind of step back and look at it as a business decision, because that's what the NFL is. It's all about winning, right? Of course, everything's about winning. I think they saw him as a backup quarterback, and then him supposedly falling on his face and not interviewing really well, and even Dion coming out and saying, we're not going to go with certain teams. I don't think I think he's better than a 5th round pick, but he's definitely not a 1st round pick when he's projected. And I think it's just all the drama and all the baggage and everything around him that the Browns didn't really want that, or any other team. So the 5th, I'm surprised he went to the 5th round. But back to your saying is Dylan Gabriel, got the Deshaun Washington issue, you got Joe Flacco, you got Kenny Pickett. Like, that's 4 guys. You only can really have 3 in a practice squad, so somebody's going to be left out. I mean, right. The Sanders kid might come in with a chip on his shoulder and, they're going to mention, hey, Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round, blah, blah, blah. But I just think, he thought he was probably better than he is, no offense to the kid, and he might end up being a all-pro or kill it. But just that was one of the losers from it that I saw. Another one that would fall from grace was Quinn Ewers going in the 7th round. I think he thought he was a lot more upside. Also, I'm going to throw it out there, Dan Jackson was a pick ahead of him in the 7th round. So, because, Quinn Ewers, Texas, great year, went to the playoffs, but just I don't know what happened there. He's a fall from grace and dropped.
Well, so some of the losers Quinn Ewers, he was injured a lot this past season. He had that oblique injury, I think it was. Yeah. And so me personally, I would have loved to seen Quinn Ewers go back to college. Obviously not Texas, because they're going to go with Arch Manning. Yeah. But, maybe go to a team like North Carolina with under Bill Belichick, or, even a team like Auburn or Oklahoma in the SEC, and just kind of really, just compile a really good season. So I think that would have helped him a lot, because he was offered, I think, $8 million in NIL. And I think his rookie contract, because he went in the 7th round, is worth barely $1 million. So he lost $7 million by, not going back to college. And I think that's the direction that we're going to go, especially until college gets a handle on this NIL, is,
right.
The athletes are going to look at it like, hey, am I going to make more money in the NFL, or am I going to make more money staying here for one more year? And, I can go on and on and on about that. But, Quinn Ewers falling to the 7th round, honestly, it does kind of shock me, but at the same time, it doesn't, because, with that injury, he wasn't able to play like he was the year before. And I just think that, I don't know, who knows, maybe all those commercials that he was in, the Dr. Pepper commercials and stuff like that, maybe that got to him. Maybe it was too much for him. Maybe it made his head swell a little bit, but I don't know. What I do know is he went in the 7th round to the Miami Dolphins, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a backup, unfortunately. Right. He's now, if he gets in the starting lineup, maybe he can prove that, he belongs here, but I see him kind of being as a career backup. And so
I agree. It was overall a weak quarterback class. Cam Ward coming out of the gate at number 1, and I think that was just a big drop. I did like Jackson Dart going to the Giants, because I had some Steeler fans. Hey, Jackson Dart's sitting there, and we were even doing a watch along. He's like, man, I'd take Jackson Dart, anybody but Shedeur Sanders. So
it is actually funny that you said that, because I actually forgot about the Giants. And you want to talk about a team that is probably a big winner. It's got to be the Giants.
They were loaded, yeah. I agree. Good draft.
They got arguably the best player in the draft at number 3 overall, Abdul Carter. Mm-hmm. They traded back into the 1st round, basically gave up nothing to do so, and took Jackson Dart 25th overall. Then they went and got Darius Alexander in the 3rd round, the first pick in the 3rd round. So they're just beefing up their defensive line. And then in the 4th round, they went out and got Cam Scatterbo, the bruiser back from Arizona State.
Dude, all great game in that against was a Texas, man, all over the field. 180-something yards rushing, over 100 receiving, threw a touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, honestly, like going back to the winners and losers, I'm sorry that I had to swing back here, but I feel like the Giants have to be like considered probably one of the biggest winners of this draft as well because
Yeah.
they beefed up their defensive line that was already a very strong focal point of that defense, and they got a big bruiser back. And look at it, they got their quarterback of the future. They got a big bruising back. So when Russell Wilson gets on the goal line, we all know it's going to Cam Scatterbo, but try to, he's kind of like Ashton Genty, try to tackle the guy, So
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a Giants fan, but I am definitely going to be paying attention to how they do this season. And I think it's very important that the Giants have a great season and had a great draft because their GM and head coach has got to be on the hot seat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like they could have, been fired last season. So they got their bruiser, they got their quarterback of the future, they beefed up their defensive line, and then they went out and got an offensive lineman and a tight end for some depth. But, really, really solid draft for the Giants.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. I think Mel Kiper gave them like an A or A plus, so I agree with that. I'm going to be a little biased on the winners was me for Atlanta Falcons fans, the way I mentioned earlier, finally got a Georgia guy, Jalon Walker, can be the face for the Atlanta Falcons in the first round. James Pierce Jr., I think they traded up for him, but he did really well. Edge rusher, got a bunch of sacks at Tennessee. I think that was a good pickup. And then got Xavier Watts. I think they had to trade up for him too. Third round, ball hawk, 13 picks for Notre Dame. Scrappy, good defense. They only had 5 picks, but going first 4 with some definite needs in defense because that defense it was bad this past year. I think they were like 31st, dead last in all defense categories. So I think the Falcons did well picking up some defensive guys.
I'm going to push back on this just a little, if I may.
Yep.
I really like the Jalon Walker pick. I think that was, obviously the best pick for them. My head scratcher is when they traded back into the first round and they did take edge rush James Pierce Jr. I don't think that his talent is there, but I was hearing reports, in the offseason during the draft combine and stuff of that nature, that he kind of really was becoming a locker room issue, especially late in the season last season. Now, I don't know if maybe that was maybe the culture at Tennessee or if there's something, more specifically related to him. But I heard that he was really kind of a locker room issue. And for me, going in the first round, that just kind of throws up a red flag to me.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe with Coach Raheem Morris, he can coach that out of him because I do believe that you can coach that aspect out of players. You just need the right leadership. Overall, they did have a very solid draft. Xavier Watts, Notre Dame. Honestly, him going in the third round is a steal in my book. He's another one of those I saw. He could have easily went late first round if a team, like a team like Baltimore or Philadelphia who needed safety help. He could have easily went right there, or he could have went mid-second round. So the fact that he kind of fell toward the back end of the third round, that was a solid pick for the Falcons for sure. And then they doubled down and got Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. So
yeah, man.
I'm guessing the Falcons' needs were a little bit more on the defensive side than the offensive side.
Yeah. They're in win now mode, and I think Raheem Morris, after coming off only 8-win season with all the talent on offense, they saw where the needs are, so we'll see.
Hey, Raheem Morris, could you do your boy a favor and feed Kyle Pitts the ball? I need him for my fantasy team.
Yeah.
He's my tight end. I really need Kyle Pitts to get the ball this season. Raheem Morris, if you're listening.
Yeah, I'm with him. I had Kyle Pitts 2 years ago, man. It was really frustrating they couldn't get it to him. I'm with you on that. I think all Falcons felt that.
Last season, at one point, I was so frustrated with Kyle Pitts that on my show, I actually said, if somebody offered me a Big Mac and a small fry, I would trade him to them because that's how frustrated I am because, I drafted him. Actually, I traded for him and I was like, hey, he's going to be good. And he has not lived up to the hype whatsoever. So Raheem Morris does design some plays just for him, feed him the ball, and let's go get some wins for my fantasy team.
There you go. Feed Kyle Pitts, man. Sure that could be a T-shirt or something. Feed him. Yeah, Tim, appreciate you coming on the podcast. And how do we follow you on social media and everything?
All right, so you can follow, here on YouTube, Answer the Call, as you see right there on the screen.
I like it.
On Instagram, it's answer_the_call COLL. Spotify, I post weekly episodes. So if you miss the live, you want to tune in later while you're going to work, it's on Spotify. And of course on Facebook, Answer the Call COLL. And the reason for that, real quick, is my last name's Collins. I'm a big fan of Colin Cowherd, the Herd.
Okay.
And I was just sitting here one day and I was thinking about, starting a podcast, and I was trying to come up with a name.
There you go.
And my phone rang and I answered it. And then I was like, and it was my buddy, and we were kind of talking football. And then I was just sitting there. I was like, how about Answer the Call? But instead of the traditional CALL, like it would normally be spelled, I spell it COLL for my last name. And that's kind of how Answer the Call became a thing. So, and real quick, before we end, if you want to talk ball, I'll answer the call.
There you go. I like it, man. That is original. That's catchy. I like it. Make sure and check out Tim on Answer the Call. He's 79 subscribers and growing. Make sure to like, subscribe, give him a subscribe there, make it grow.
Hey, just getting started.
Also, Instagram over 470 followers. So yeah, man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on the show. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
I gotta hope that we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, man, it was good. We'll have to, if it's in the season, get you on there and preview some Arkansas, some Razorbacks.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Yeah, man.
All right. I'm down, bro.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on. And if everybody's still around, make sure to like, subscribe, share the Dawg House Podcast, and we'll have some more original content coming up.